Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So as I said, there is still a bit of hospital hangover. So we're going to have an open forum on this month's subject of study, which is Karma Yoga. As we begin, I do have a couple of announcements. Swami Sarvadevananda, our head minister, plans to be here for a visit from May 17th to May 19th. He will be available for private interviews and other spiritual instruction, including initiation. He expects me to manage his calendar for the visit, so if you wish to talk with him or receive instruction, please email me right away. That can be done through the center's website if you don't already have my email address. And when you email, please include your phone number. So May 17th, 18th, and 19th. The Swami will arrive on the 17th and we'll have time for interviews that afternoon and evening. Then on the morning of the 18th, he will offer Diksha or initiation to those who wish to receive it. And then he will continue with his interviews. So if you wish to receive initiation, please let me know, because those will be the conversations that the Swami has on the 17th. Then the rest of you who either that is not a concern for you or are already his disciples will see him on the 18th and on the morning of the 19th. He will leave in the afternoon or evening of the 19th. Any questions about anything that I just said? Any questions from anyone about the Swami's visit?
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
This may sound a little silly. What is the benefit of being initiated spiritually in life? Just generally, what is the benefit of being initiated?
It gives you a focus for your spiritual practice that you might not otherwise have. It gives you the benefit of instructions from someone who is the face of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. And beyond that, Frank, if you'd like to talk about it, please call me on the phone or come by the center and we can talk about it.
Okay, thank you.
And if you have more questions, please do. But I don't want to go deeper into it because it becomes more personal after that. But thanks for the question. Very good question.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Second announcement. We hope to have your center open for face-to-face gatherings on May 1st. That's being evaluated each week. Read our e-newsletter or check the center's Facebook page or website for updates. Of course, I'll be making announcements as time goes on about that too. When we do reopen, all classes and talks will continue to be offered over Zoom. So the classes will be held here in the fellowship hall so that I can talk to those people who are sitting right there, as well as to yourselves who are with us on Zoom. The talks will be offered from the chapel. And again, there'll be the opportunity to talk with you because there'll be a screen on which you'll be projected. And then the people in the chapel itself. So any comments or questions about that? All right. Once again, welcome to our gathering this morning. We are going to have an open forum on the topic of karma yoga. Now, the notes for this, a link has been posted in the chat section. So if you wish to go get these notes that I'm about to read, you can access them there. It's a definition of karma yoga as formulated from here. Karma yoga, of course, has its own principles and practices, which we will discuss this morning. So if you wish to have that definition in front of you, there is a link and you can download what I'm about to read.
I'm looking at the chat section and I don't see it.
Cindy?
It's there, Tom.
It's
She
there.
posted
It's
it.
at the top. It's the first
First
chat.
one.
First chat in the chat.
Okay, there's something wrong with my system then.
Okay,
It's
you can
okay.
Tom, you can also go to the vedantaatlanta.org homepage and scroll down on the this week is on and
Oh, okay. That's
link
what I'll
to
do.
it. Okay, it's there
Thank you.
too for those who have trouble with the chat.
Can you repeat that, Cindy? Because my iPad's not showing it either.
Okay, just go to the homepage of the center's website at vedantaatlanta.org. And there's a section, just scroll down, there's a section that says this week at your center, and it has, just go down to Sunday. And you'll see, click here for PDF of notes. I think that's what it says. But there's a link, a highlighted link for Sunday.
Thanks.
Okay.
We all set? Okay. March is a month for study of karma yoga, a spiritual path leading to the abandonment of selfishness. As a karma yogi, you as a karma yogi, you practice offering your actions and their results, as well as your perceptions, thoughts, and feelings to the divine presence. I'm going to repeat that. These are the practices. As a karma yogi, you practice offering your actions and their results, as well as your emotions, thoughts, and feelings to the divine presence. In many Ramakrishna mission centers, this prayer is chanted by the congregation in unison at the end of a worship service's pujas, Homa fire ceremony. No matter what I may have done, said, or thought, in waking, dreaming, or dreamless sleep, with my mind, my tongue, my hands, or my other members, may all that be an offering to the divine presence. No matter what I may have done, said, or thought, in waking, dreaming, or dreamless sleep, with my mind, my tongue, my hands, or my other members, may all that be an offering to the divine presence. Even before fully knowing this presence, as a karma yogi, you hold firmly to the belief that this presence is within each person or other living being that you interact with or serve. Working and abiding in this spirit, you are increasingly able to release attachment to your activities and their results. This yields the freedom and contentment promised by Karma Yoga. As Sri Krishna says in chapter 2 of the Gita, even a little practice of this yoga will save you from the terrible wheel of rebirth and death. And so that's the working definition of Karma Yoga. It is only partial, of course. The full description of Karma Yoga is in chapters 3 through 6 of Bhagavad Gita. But let's just start the discussion by asking, if you are inclined to practice this yoga, which practice or what practice is it that most appeals to you and that you find most auspicious and productive to do? If indeed Karma Yoga appeals to you, and there's no reason that it must, as we often say. This is not dogma. This is an invitation to a way of being with the divine presence. And it is for people primarily of an active temperament, though we are all active. Anything at all from what you find most auspicious or productive for you in practicing Karma Yoga.
Can I'll try to answer that question.
Please.
But this is on my mind, so I'm going to say this first. We often talk, when we're talking about karma yoga, we talk about we talk about work a lot, the work we do, whether it's at home or, you know, our job or taking care of our family, this sort of work, offering that to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's included in that description you just read, and we don't talk about it as often. But it's also, it's I find something that's for me even more um, I'm not getting the word I want. Profound something, that's not the word, but is offering because and seeing in the other people around me and myself as being, the divine within, the presence within. I'm getting there. Sorry. Um, I don't want to say offering your ego, but offering your thoughts and emotions. Because the more I've practiced that, which has been in more recent times, um, the more things that used to bother me that other people might do just don't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it happening. I see it in the moment, and I see it on reflection, and in the moment it's wonderful too, because it's like, oh wow, that would have just had me all over the place crazy, 10 years ago. And now I'm just barely noticing it, and it allows me to stay present with the presence. So I
Thank
just
you.
want to, yeah, I just wanted
Thank you,
to,
Cindy. And that is what is meant by if you practice karma yoga, it offers you freedom and contentment that you wouldn't otherwise have. And as you pointed out, when you deal with the people in your work life in this way, as you hold firmly to the belief that the divine presence is within them, and so you, as you serve and interact with them, you hold that thought that it's within them as within you, and so your whole life becomes a practice of namaste. The divine within this salutes and serves the divine within that, or the other person, or being. So yes, thank you. Exactly. Anyone else?
May I try? May I?
Yes, of course, Uma.
This is the way I understand how to perform action, which means also for me how not to perform action. And how not to is that I am the doer. If I don't do this, or without me, the whole show will collapse. So that is ego, attachment. Then offering to God, that I have to be particularly conscious, because ego is like a sly thing. It gets in without your knowledge, because you are always accustomed to put it in terms of, see what I did, see what difference I'm making. Did people recognize my name? For example, in the early part, about 30 years ago, when I started writing and sending articles to newspapers, and when they accepted it, I jumped up and said, I'm making something, I'm making a dent. And when I saw the byline, I said, I could not wait to go to the mailbox and see it for myself, and then think of all other my friends, and everybody will be looking at my byline, and I'm becoming famous and all that. And now, thanks to you, thanks to Vedanta Center, thanks to this ongoing Vedanta teachings, I have gradually been able to separate what I'm doing from I am doing. That karta, that I'm not the karta, but God has given me some gift, some talent, as He has given to everyone. This is my thing, and I'm going to use it. So now, of course, it's exciting to see your articles and books, but that path that I want to do it for fame and name, that has reduced, I would not say to a zero, but pretty much. So that far, I think I've made some progress.
Excellent. And that is precisely what is meant by abandoning selfishness. You don't think of this as something that is a possession of the small self.
Yeah.
It is a gift of the divine self that finds its way into reality, this relative reality that we share, through this instrument.
Right, right.
And so then you can celebrate it along with everyone else. Like, what a wonderful thing happened, you know, rather than saying, look at me, look at me.
Yeah,
Oh, as Jesus said, well, then verily you have your reward.
yeah. But it's a long way to go. Long way to go still. But I'm learning.
Well, if we weren't still learning, Uma, we would disappear. We would simply evaporate in a puff of dissolving gunas.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything at all? What is it of karma yoga, given that it appeals to you? What is it of karma yoga that you find practical and auspicious in your life, given that it has the results that the two people who've spoken before have said?
Brother, this is Bhaskar.
Yes, hello, Bhaskar.
I actually have, I have three things pasted, three vectors that I've written from a prior reading of Karma Yoga. But I'm quasi-retired and I find it very difficult to put it into action. But the three vectors are Karma Phala Sankalpa Tyaga, which means give up the attachment to the results of action. Karma Sankalpa Tyaga, which means give up the attachment to work itself. And the last one is Karma Kartavya Sankalpa Tyaga, which give up the feeling of being the agent or doer. And I know the prior folks that talked, they probably talked all about these three. But the takeaway for me is that obviously I didn't know about these things in my professional life. And now that I've stepped away, I still feel very difficult and puzzled as to how to put these three vectors into work.
Well, thank you for being straightforward about that. Sri Krishna says in the Gita that the way to put these into practice and make them work for you is through relationship with the divine presence, however it arises in you, however it appeals to your heart. It does not have to be Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna would be the first to say that and does say it elsewhere in the Gita. But developing a relationship, which is a matter of, just as you would develop a relationship with anyone else, you speak to that divine person. And after a while, as you practice this, you say, I'm offering this to you. I'm relieving myself of the burden of the karma and so on by following your instructions. What you begin to feel is a response. You begin to feel that there is something present on the other side of that. And you begin to feel warmer and warmer toward it, quite spontaneously. So it is in, as Sri Krishna says, the development of this relationship, which he summarizes by calling it living sacramentally. Offer everything as a sacrament to the divine presence. And just say, I'm doing that. I'm offering this to you. There is a prayer in that you'll find in the archives that is a summary of the things that you might offer. You can download that and have a look at it and see how you might wish to adapt it for yourself. But it is in that relationship that we begin to feel. And of course, when we practice this individually with other human beings in our lives, as Cindy pointed out, then the relationship with them is transformed as well. And she noted that things that would have bothered her tremendously are barely noticeable anymore. Now that is a direct fruit of spiritual practice. And it transforms your relationship because you don't get upset with them. It isn't that you're practicing titikshā forbearance. It simply spontaneously arises by making the divine person and interaction with the divine person the center of your relationships with other human beings, and for that matter, all other living beings. Thank you, Bhaskar. Anyone else, please?
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, I'm.
Namaste. I feel over the years practicing meditation, now I have deepened my practices. Through that, I am able to calmly accept any opposition that comes towards me, any opposition, no expectations. And I feel fully, almost 98, 99% liberated. And I'm almost like a lot of times when opposition comes at me and somebody snaps, I'm like looking for my ego. Where did it go? Where did I leave it? I'm just wondering what happened to my ego? Where is it? This is what I am feeling fully almost every day and every minute of my time. So it's wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. Meditation does get you there. If anybody is doing it, I can guarantee you it may take 10 years, 20 years, but it'll get us there. I feel like I am there almost 99%. I wouldn't say I'm fully there. So
that's it. We discover that divine being within
presence
us
within us. Exactly.
through meditation.
Exactly.
And of course, there are various kinds of meditation. But one of the things we do is we discover the divine presence, that living presence, as Swami Prabhavananda put it. We discover that living presence within us. And then, as he says, that living presence is you yourself, no different. Experience it.
All your help last 3 years, it has deepened my practices so much. And thank you, thank you, thank you. All the readings, all the lectures, every little knowledge and wisdom you gave us, it just really helped ripen. It ripened my practices. It ripened my liberation to move towards liberation. Thank you.
If you remember in the definition as read, Karma Yoga, as defined by Sri Krishna, offers you freedom and contentment.
Sure did. It sure did to me.
And that is what Haima is pointing to. Freedom from having to react to opposition or anything else that arises. It simply doesn't have the sting that it had before. And this is what Sri Krishna means. And it's in these chapters on Karma Yoga. The yoga is the breaking of contact with pain. By that, he means the kind of pain that Haima was talking about and that Cindy was talking about earlier, and that Uma mentioned when she said she felt free from the need to isolate herself by thinking, this is me, this is mine. No. That's a way of isolating ourselves. When we think it is the divine's and it came through me, then you can celebrate with everyone else. the wonder that has been achieved. You don't have to think, I'm alone with this. Everybody look at me. Ooh, really, that becomes a horrifying thought.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, Hyman. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Frank.
Sorry. At first I wasn't too pulled to karma yoga. I'd always visualized it as just standing on a soup line. And what I've noticed, or for me over time, is that I can't not do karma yoga, meaning my thoughts, my speech, my action are all karma. So I can't not do karma yoga. So I found that I better start being a little bit more mindful of how I do it. And one of the things I recognized is that I have to be careful with is attachment to results. You know, when I hold the door open for someone and they don't say thank you. So I have to be careful of the results. And recently, I didn't really look at it as karma yoga until you were speaking about it. I had just gotten approved to adopt children from the foster care system. And I really make a difference in children's lives and be there for them. And I never looked at that as karma. And now with what's going on with Ukrainians saying that they're starting to come into America, I'm trying to get in contact, because I don't have the kids in my home yet. I'm trying to get in contact with people to open up my home to Ukrainian refugees who might need a home. Again, never thought about that as karma yoga, just felt pulled to do it. But now that you're speaking of it, it just came up. So, so those are the two things. That's how I'm looking about manifesting the karma yoga, recognizing I can't not do karma yoga, and needing to work on letting go of my attachments to results when I am actually nice.
How nicely said. When I am actually nice. Yes, that's it. But what you pointed out at the beginning of what you said, Frank, is that we're all doing karma all the time. Karma simply means action. Every thought, every blink of your eyes, every thing that you say, every action that you perform is karma. And as Frank pointed out, if I'm mindful, I can turn this into karma yoga. That is, karma yoga is the uniting of the action with the practices and principles of that yoga. And then that's where the transforming power comes in. And we actually do then begin to realize there's no need for someone to thank me when I open the door for them. I didn't open the door for them so that they would thank me. I opened the door for them because it seemed like the right thing to do in that moment. And it is, if you then transform that even further and say, wouldn't you open the door for the divine person if the divine person was there? A man that I knew, this was years ago, decades ago actually, who drove very recklessly. He asked his teacher, who was a Buddhist teacher, how can I correct this? And the teacher simply said to him, well, put the Buddha in your passenger seat. And Neil actually did this. His name was Neil. Neil actually did this. And the person that we used to call Zizwheel Neil, because he would, kind of round the corner on two tires, it transformed him because he felt the presence of the divine being in the form of Buddha in the truck with him that he used to drive. So this, it actually does, as these other people have been saying, it actually does work. Anything else from anyone? This is wonderful. This is exactly what we should be doing in an open forum.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Bhagirath.
as an offshoot of our discussion, not to act when you are supposed to act is also wrong. The examples are given when Draupadi was molested, none of the warriors in the courtyard said anything. Dhritarashtra was quiet, Drona was quiet, Krupachari was quiet, and that was wrong. And that gave rise to a horrible war. On the other hand, when a bird in mating was pierced by a hunter, Valmiki blurted out with anger, and that became a Ramayana poetry. Because that time not to act is also a failure of your responsibility. And many times you have to put it the balance that you acted when you wanted to act, you did not act when you should not have acted, but the sting which you are talking about, that sting is a very, very important thing. That the sting has to be removed first. Either way, when you act or you do not act, if the sting is not removed, then the soul of the whole thing is not properly met.
Yes, when we are called upon to act by the situation and we do not, this is called an error of omission. And it is usually a failure brought on by anxiety and fear. We don't know what's going to happen if we act what we know is appropriately, so we don't act. I'm very familiar with this pattern, having been raised in a family where the consequences of not acting properly were sometimes dire. So it was a long road winding for me to come to the realization that it is better to act and observe the consequences than it is to hang back for fear of the consequences. And Bhagirath brought up something that's very, very important in Karma Yoga, that you have the courage of your convictions, of your faith, to go ahead and do what is clearly appropriate, the auspicious thing, even though you don't know what the outcome is going to be. Thank you, Bhagirath. That was very well observed. The errors of omission rather than just commission. Any follow-on to that from anyone? Anything to add from your own wisdom or experience? Or any concern or question that arises?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Swam.
yeah, I always like when you say that the should, we should not do anything because we should, but it comes from within. And for example, like in the plane, they say first put your oxygen mask before you can help others. So
Yes.
some are naturally inclined to go and do all these so-called, big things, but some, the little things that come naturally without struggle, those are what I feel helps me to be a karma yogi. That it just comes and I give and not think about, oh, I should do this or I should do that.
Very well observed. That if you'll notice that in teaching karma yoga in the Gita, Sri Krishna does not compel, he invites. He says, if you want to transform your way of being and your way of being in the world according to these practices, I invite you to do this. He doesn't say you should or you must. He says, and there are times when he says, if you want this result, then this is what must be done. But it's all in the context of an invitation to consider doing and being that way. Thank you, Swami. That's very well observed. And it is the little things. It is the moment-to-momentness of life. Being mindful in the moment of what is the auspicious or appropriate thing to do or not do. So instead of saying should, no, appropriate, auspicious, inappropriate, inauspicious. Just get rid of the shoulda, coulda, woulda words. As the great golfer Byron Nelson said, there's no greater enemy of making a good golf shot than shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have done this, I could have done that, if only I would have done this. No, shoulda, coulda, woulda is just an enemy of concentration and focused attention. Thank you, Swayam. Anyone else, please?
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Uma.
I want to bring up one very personally sensitive issue. Not that sense personal, but what I'm trying to learn from what is said here. To me, the biggest challenge is non-attachment.
Yes.
Particularly non-attachment to pain. And we all have one kind or another physical pain.
Well, now, physical pain is a different thing, dear.
Now, what I'm trying to say is that in spite of knowing that this is my body which is suffering, it's not who I am. I'm not my body and all that. I buy that. But when it comes, it hits you hard. How do I dissociate myself from the pain? And if I'm not putting you on that higher shelf, but I do mean what I'm saying, that when a certain condition, which is chronic, which is not just like headache, that take a tablet and make it go away. But when you are having some kind of physical chronic pain, how do I manage? I'm trying very hard, but that is still, for me, a challenge. A challenge.
Of course it is, dear. Of course it is. And it's instructive to me, and therefore this instruction is available to you as well. Swami Swahananda told his doctors, "Whatever you do not allow me to be in pain." He would rather do what was necessary to be apart from the pain and be what was necessary than be distracted by the pain. It's so distracting, pain. Now, I'll tell you this story. Many of you have heard it before. The answer to your question, Uma, is through transcendence of our body consciousness, which is very difficult and it is at the far end of the accomplishment of karma yoga. But nevertheless, it is accessible to us to lesser degrees, even though we're not as accomplished as the story I'm about to tell you shows. Swami Turiyananda was one of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples. Very strong, very committed Swami. He is said to be the embodiment of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. At one time, his attendant told him, "Swami, you've been ignoring this great big abscess on your back long enough, this great big boil on your back long enough. It's getting to the point where it'll be dangerous. If something goes wrong, the infection could get in your blood and it will kill you. So we need to go to the surgeon." Turiyananda said, "All right." They went to the surgeon. Now, in those days, anesthesia was very primitive. There was ether, there was laudanum, which is an opiate, there was alcohol. That was about it. So the surgeon presented the Swami with those options and said, "Which would you like? Because this is going to be very painful." The Swami said, "No, none of those. You just arrange your instruments, get ready, and tell me when you're going to begin." And the surgeon did as he was instructed. And the Swami paused a few moments and said, "All right, go ahead." Without any anesthetic of any kind, this great, big, and I mean big, like big as a lemon, big, almost as big as a baseball, that kind of thing. Boil, abscess, whatever you call it, carbuncle, on his back was surgically cut out. And in those days, they did not have the kind of ways of cauterizing bleeding that they have now. It was done with a red-hot iron. So to staunch the bleeding, the surgeon was burning those blood vessels shut with a red-hot iron. During all of this cutting and cauterization with a red-hot iron, it was as if there was nothing happening. It was as if there was nothing happening. All right, here's the rest of the story. A few days later, the attendant, the Swami's attendant, decided it was time to change the dressing on the wound. And so when the Swami was changing his clothes, the attendant simply pulled the dressing off. And the Swami said, "Ouch!" And the attendant said, "Swami, I don't understand. I saw you sit
He said,
and go through this surgery without a murmur, and yet the much less pain of pulling off the dressing, you say, ouch. And the Swami said, well, all that's true, but you did not tell me you were going to do it, so I had no time to prepare myself. What does prepare yourself mean? It means being so skilled at getting your mind into that transcendent state that is available to us through the witness presence, which Sri Krishna describes very eloquently in chapters 5 and 6 of the Gita. That is the presence of the Atman. And it is available to all of us. This is why when Swami Brahmananda, again, Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother's spiritual son, when he was dying what would ordinarily be a very painful death, he said he felt as if he was floating above it all. And what was he thinking of? He was thinking of his delightful relationship with Sri Krishna and dancing with him. Put anklets on my feet, I want to dance with Krishna. Put anklets on my feet, I want to dance with my Lord. The words that he said were turned into that song by a disciple of Swami Prabhupada, Mary Beth Melton. But that's what was happening. So this transcendence of physical pain, when Sri Krishna said breaking contact with pain, he didn't limit it. He didn't say just this kind of pain or that kind of pain. But psychological and mental pain, they are a mastery of those comes quicker than this mastery of physical pain.
yeah,
But it is only through transcendence of body consciousness, through this intense relationship with the divine, where you forget all about your body. But, as I said, that's a long road to winding.
yeah.
And in the meantime, as Sri Ramakrishna pointed out, he said, the old ways take too long now in this dark time of the end of the Kali Yuga. He said, it's time for Dr. Gupta's mixture. Dr. Gupta's mixture was, patent medicine, and it relieved pain and made you feel better. So this is his metaphor for using medicines, using the modern medicines to relieve pain. And thank God for them. I would have had a very different experience in the hospital if I hadn't had a regular, the nurses brought pain medications.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
I'd like to say something about pain.
Yes, Tom, please.
So I've always been frightened of pain. Well, first, let me go back and tell you a story. I guess it was about 15 years ago. I had toe surgery. I had hammer toe surgery. And what they do is they break all your toes and then they stick wires in them to hold them straight.
Good God.
They do all that while you're unconscious. And I had this idea that by using advanced spiritual techniques, when I woke up, I would not take the pain medication. And that dissolved really quickly.
Yes, I understand fully, Tom.
And I was very grateful for the pain medication. And now I think there's a sort of a puritanical thing about not taking pain medication. I just think pain medication is a blessing.
It's a gift, you bet.
It's true that there's danger of addiction, but for most people don't get addicted. And I'll take whatever they give me, as long as it keeps me from being in pain. And I don't think there's anything particularly spiritual about living without pain medication. There may be some very, very rare people who can do that, but I'm not one of them. And Ted Blanchard, a lot of you know Ted. He told me a story. Before he was a pilot, he was in the Air Force. He was a fighter pilot. And the people that are most likely to be captured in battle are pilots, because the plane gets shot down over enemy territory, but then they parachute out and they survive. And they're the people most likely to be captured, and the people most likely to be tortured. So they give them military training in how to deal with torture. But what the training comes down to is that everybody breaks. People think that they'll be war heroes and that they won't break under torture, but everybody breaks.
Yep.
And don't beat up on yourself over it. Pain is just a really powerful thing, and it can.
Yes.
When it's intense enough, you will betray everything you love and tell the enemy everything that they want to know. Anyway, so pain's real powerful. But the thing I notice in myself, I'm not in any pain right now, but the anxiety about pain is really, for me in my life, I've had more anxiety about pain than I've actually had pain.
Yes.
I worry about it. I get frightened. And I know with the dentist, when they give you the gas, part of it, the gas isn't really a painkiller, but it's an anxiety killer. Yeah. And you just take the gas and then you say, drill away, doc. So anxiety, it's good for me to look at all of the anxiety, that a lot of the pain that I fear never actually happens.
Yes.
And those are my thoughts on pain. Thank you.
Just a lighthearted observance of what you just said about the anxiety and not happening. Mark Twain remarked, "In my life, thousands of terrible things have occurred to me, most of which never happened." So, yes, these things will occur to us. And we have our ways of dealing with them, and karma yoga is one. Thank you, Tom. That was very instructive. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Bhagara.
The topic of pain and suffering, there is no final word that you can say on that one. But let me bring up another model to show that pain is involuntary, but suffering is voluntary. In the sense that if you see a woman in a labor, oh boy, she is going through an excruciating pain, because through a very narrow organ, a big baby is trying to come out. So the stretching, the outstretching of the muscles and the organ is unbearable. And yet it is called labor pain, never labor suffering, because she does not suffer. Not only that, she next time for the second baby, she's again ready. She doesn't say that my first labor was so painful, I don't want another baby. So I'm trying to bring out the intricate part of the brain, which sometimes accepts pain, sometimes does not. And our karma yoga helps enormously in understanding the intricacy of that one, so that you can look upon your pain in an objective way. You might not be able to handle it, but by looking at it objective way, you can dull the intensity of pain.
Very well said. If, as Swami Prabhupada remarked, if we could just see ourselves as the Atman and look at the things of the world objectively, everything would pass by and be all right. If we could just think of ourselves as the Atman and look on the things of the world objectively, everything would pass by and be all right. Now, he starts with the hard part. We have to, as Haima pointed out earlier, we have to practice some form of meditation so that we gain access to that knowledge of Saguna Atman, Atman with attributes, that is the face of the Atman within us. Sri Krishna calls it both the Atman and the witness in chapters 4, 5, and 6 of the Gita. We all will be benefited, and I mean this from the very depths of my being. We all will be benefited by reading chapters 2 through 6 of the Gita from time to time. Just go from the beginning of chapter 2, or if you wish to share Arjuna's anguish, read chapter 1 as well. If you wish to understand the depth of his anguish and why Sri Krishna says what he says, read chapter 1 as well. But the instruction really comes in chapters 2 through 6. And so if we read those, we get Sri Krishna's instruction on the nature of reality, the possibility of this relationship with the divine presence, and I can't talk just now. I'm having a talk. I'm giving a talk. That's a friend from California who doesn't understand what time it is here. So, chapters 2 through 6 of the Gita, we'll all do ourselves a favor of reading them, and then, after a while going back and reading them again. Anything else from anyone? All right, it's a little afternoon, I think. Yeah, it's, what is it, 12:05? 12:05, yeah. So any final thoughts from anyone? I mean, we can continue the conversation as long as anyone's willing to share.
Brother Shankara, this is Cassandra.
Yes, Cassandra.
If I might, I'd like to ask for some wisdom with regard to pain. In my life, I've had some pain, but I wouldn't say that it would be pain like some people have suffered. Migraine headaches, things of that nature, a few injuries, but nothing life-threatening and nothing major. My issue is more when I observe others' pain or the pain of an animal.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I have a much more difficult time staying as the witness, staying as the observer, than I do even with my own pain. As an example, several years ago, I was driving and a deer leaped out of the ditch and my car hit the deer.
Oh.
And even now, there's residual emotion around that. because I think for me, I have some techniques or practices for dealing with my own pain. But
Mhm.
when I see an animal or a human being who doesn't seem to have a way to deal with it, the suffering can feel not overwhelming, but overwhelming. What would you suggest? I feel like I overreact, and I do know that I can offer this to the divine, even this sense of deep pain and compassion for another being that's suffering. I can offer that to the divine. I can give even that. What else might I do, or how else might I look at this? I would appreciate your comments.
Well, Cassandra, you answered your own question truly. The only way for us to be with these things, and first of all, let me point out that Sri Krishna says that those who do feel deeply the suffering of others, animals, other human beings, are very dear to him. All right, now that is the opening or invitation to that relationship. If you are dear to him because of the quality of your character, then that relationship is that much easier to develop. It is the only real strategy, the only real way of dealing with this suffering is to offer it to the divine within yourself and the universal being. This is not my creation, O divine being. This is not the fact that the deer leapt from the ditch and there was no way that your car could not strike the deer. This was not your doing. So it's going to be painful for you. And this is why Sri Krishna says you're dear to him. And you can make it particular to Krishna or to any aspect of the divine being that you feel resident in your heart. We will feel the suffering. So the only thing to do is develop that relationship so that your tears and your anguish can be shared with the divine person, which is what Sri Krishna, and for that matter, Jesus and Buddha, all say, you may share these things with me. It's called, in technical terms, taking refuge. You take refuge in the divine being. But there doesn't seem to be any way to avoid, and perhaps even we should not try to avoid, the suffering that we experience in others. It will inform us as to our best, our most appropriate, our most auspicious response. Now, when you hit a deer with your car and the deer is in terrible pain and dying, unless you have a gun with you or able to put the deer out of its misery, there's very little you can do. So I hope that's responsive, Cassandra. You've brought up one of the most difficult aspects is the experiencing and the very deep experiencing of the pain and suffering of others.
Thank you for that. And a blessing that came from that experience was that and I was out in a very rural area in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And behind me on this stretch of road where there were very few people was a tow truck. and he saw what happened, and he immediately pulled over behind me. And he called someone with his company who came and stayed with me, and we stayed with the deer. And he actually called someone who could come with the gun. We call the game warden,
Mhm.
who could come and take care of the deer.
Yes, and that is taking care of the deer. To euthanize the deer in that case is the only real mercy. There's no way to restore that deer to health. No matter how much care you lavished on it, it wouldn't be able to return to the wild and live its life.
No.
So better to release it.
And I think that the really important thing that you said to me at the end about how we should not shun the experiences of the pain of our compassion. I find a lot of times in our modern world, there are certain spiritual strands where something like a phrase like sending love and light, which I take no issue with, but sometimes I think it's easy to be encouraged to just again send love and light and bypass the pain. And so again, I have practices for myself to actually sit with the pain, actually look at it, to
Yes.
observe it, to be with it. And it is difficult, but I thank you for that comment.
And we can share, you're right about this, if we just casually say, oh, send some, da, 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 which allows us to avoid really dealing with it. There is something very profound in sharing it. Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, was asked, Swami, does prayer really work? And he said, what? Yes, of course it works. Do you think you are separate? And when you share the pain or anguish of another person, whether they're aware of it or not, something happens. And it's instructive to keep in mind that our every thought is a prayer. Or as Hafiz says, an innocent step on the path.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Cassandra. That was very sweet. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
I'll just say a few words just going off of the concept of pain and my own experience with it. Whenever I think of pain, I think it was really astute what was said earlier, that pain is involuntary, but suffering is voluntary.
Yeah.
And then the example of a woman was giving birth. Scientists don't know why. It makes no sense that a woman should want to give birth again, but she does anyways, because it's possible to release that suffering. And I think of the example of the Buddhist monk in Vietnam in the 1950s who performed self-immolation in protest of Buddhist treatment in Vietnam. He sat completely still and lit himself on fire with gasoline and was able to sit in perfectly cross-legged position without even moving. All the meanwhile, his skin and flesh were burning, charred black. So I think that speaks a lot to how we can control our own inner pain, and that the suffering that we feel in the physical world is temporary. It's not real. And to bring it all back to karma yoga, it's all the result of karma. And once you realize that, it makes it easier to deal with even then.
Yes. You're right. Our realization that it is karma and there is no effect without a cause does make it easier to deal with. Interestingly, that monk that self-immolated in the 60s. An artist friend of mine in California, David Scott, wonderful painter and sculptor. He found that that monk was still alive. That is to say, his spirit was still alive. And he did the most beautiful bust of that monk. If you go to his website, davidscott.com, you can find an image of that. You can find a photograph of that bust of that monk. And it is so serene. So serene. Not a trace of anguish. Thank you, Roberto. Yeah, that's it. It does help us to remember that when something arises in our life or in the life of someone else, there's no effect without a cause. So, as Swami Prabhavananda said, people have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort. Why did he say, don't try to remove it? We don't know enough. Only the divine person in its full manifestation knows enough to remove our pain and suffering. And will do it. This is what are called miracles. Anything else from anyone? Well, yes, please.
I want to contribute one thing, one last thing, if there is time, 1 or 2 minutes.
Please.
Okay. Sometimes when adversities come and difficult people come into your life, at that time it may seem horrible, but later on it will become an enlightening experience and you become detached more from the world. You practice karma yoga a lot more in your life, and then you see the benefit of those. It just was at that time painful. Over the time, you become a better person, better karma yogi. That's what I see. Like for a fire to the house, a flood to the house, these all are disasters. Yes, they do come in life sometimes, but they will become blessings later on in life. And you realize it. It's now nothing will bother you. You can handle them, anything that comes at you. You will be detached from the world. I just wanted to share with the group. That's all, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, Haima. Very well observed.
Thank you so
Very
much.
well observed. And in what she said, this arose here. There are 2 songs by John Lennon that you might want to listen to with regard to just exactly what Haima's just said. One is Strawberry Fields, and the other is Imagine. Just exactly, there are many other things in the songs as well, but they contain what Haima just said, so beautifully artistically stated. Strawberry Fields and Imagine. Just to let you know a little something about that song, Imagine. Swami Shantarupananda, who was the head minister of the Ramakrishna Mission Center in Portland, the Vedanta Society of Portland, for many decades. He was dying and knew he was dying of brain cancer. And he knew there would be a memorial service. And he said that his favorite song in English was John Lennon's Imagine, and to please play that song at his memorial service. Swami Shantarupananda. Who, by the way, you can find the last talk that he gave, which was on the importance of following your guru's instructions. He gave that talk at the invitation of Swami Harinamananda in San Diego, California. So if you go on the San Diego YouTube channel or website or however you access it, and just put in Swami Shanta Rupa Nanda, ShantaRupananda, Shanta Rupananda. You'll find that talk. And believe you me, it is worth your attention. It's so moving. He knew he was dying. He died 2 weeks later. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears.
Shankara?
Yes, dear Lori.
I'm reminded of the great karma yogi Wavy Gravy.
Yes.
And I'm not quite sure if I've got the quote right, but I've been thinking about it a lot these last several months. But I think he would say, where can you put your most good?
Yeah.
And so that kind of moves me a lot each day when I get up.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, what is the most auspicious way for us to spend our time? And of course, the first thing to do, the most auspicious thing when we start the day, is to offer the day to the divine presence. And then we get some intuition as to what might be the most auspicious thing. And for those of you who don't know who Wavy Gravy is, Wavy Gravy is just this amazing human being. I think he's still alive, but probably just barely, in Berkeley, California. He has done karma yoga in places all over the world, Africa, India, Nepal, but also here in the United States. He was very instrumental in solving the nutrition and security problems at Woodstock, for example. If you want to know more about him, there is a film that you can watch. Very entertaining, very instructive. It's called Saint Misbehavin'. No G on the end. Saint Misbehavin', I-N apostrophe. Saint Misbehavin'. And believe me, you'll be glad if you watch that film. We did watch it here recently again. It's really quite a film about a remarkable human being. And as Lori pointed out, just the thought of him will inspire you to be your best self. He feeds people every day, the homeless, the poor, goes shopping, cooks the food himself along with his wife. Anyway, in Berkeley. Thank you, Lori. Any final thought?
Quick parting thought on the idea of doing the most good you can. I was really influenced by the book Doing Good Better. It's about effective altruism. The idea with effective altruism is that we put as much thought into our charitable donations and charitable work as we put into things like our personal investments, because generally we don't. We do things that make us feel good about ourselves without thinking carefully about how much good they're actually doing. So I'd recommend that book, Doing Good Better. Also, you can just do a Google on effective altruism, and you'll read a lot about it. That has really helped me and cleared things up for me about doing good. Thank you.
Tom, as always, a wonderful contribution. Doing Good Better or effective altruism. Yes, to put as much thought into that as we do into what is self-advantaging. Slowly and slowly, the one will become the more predominant and the other less. Abandoning selfishness. Abandoning selfishness. That is the summary phrase for what karma yoga is. Any final thoughts from anyone? Okay. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So just so you'll know, we'll send a bulletin about it, but classes as usual, classes and talks from tomorrow on. This hospital hangover is abating, and everything looks like we're good to go. So much love to everyone, and thank you so very much for being part of this. And remember, you're part of this whether you say anything or not. The spiritual, we are one underneath the surface of appearance. We are all one. And your energy and your contribution are felt whether we sense it in our waking awareness or not. It's there. So thank you. Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.